In the beginning, there was only Cain. Cain, who sacrificed his brother out of love. Cain, who was cast out. Cain, who was cursed forever with immortality. Cain, who was cursed with the lust for blood. It is Cain from whom we all come, our sire's sire. For the passing of an age, he lived in the land of Nod, in loneliness and suffering. For an eon he remained alone, but the passing of memory drowned his sorrow. And so he returned to the world of mortals, to the world of his brother Seth, third born of Eve, and Seth's children had created. He returned and was made welcome, for none would turn against him. Due to the mark that was laid upon him, the people saw his power and worshipped him. He grew powerful, and his power was strong. His ways of awe and command were great, and the children of Seth made him king of their great city, the first city. But Cain grew lonely in his power. Deep within him the seed of loneliness blossomed and grew a dark flower. He saw within his blood the potence of fertility. By calling upon demons and listening to whispered wisdom, he learned the way to make a child for his own. He came to know its power, and doing so decided to embrace one of those near him. And lo, Uriel, dread Uriel, revealed himself to Cain that very night and said to him, Cain, though powerful you are and marked of God, know you this, that any child you make will bear your curse, that any of your progeny will forever walk in the land of Nod, and fear flame and sun, drink blood only, and eating ash only. And since they will carry their father's jealous seed, they will forever plot and fight amongst themselves. Doom not those of Adam's grandchildren, who seek to walk in righteousness, Cain. Stay your dread embrace. Still, Cain knew what he must do, and a young man named Enosh, who was the most beloved of Seth's kin, begged to be made son of the Dark Father. And Cain, mindful though he was of Uriel's words, seized Enosh and wrapped him in the dark embrace. And so it came to pass that Cain begat Enoch, and so doing named the first city Enoch. And so doing did Enoch beg for a brother, a sister. And Cain, indulgent father, gave these to him, and their names were Zillah, whose blood was most favored of Cain, and Irad, whose strength served Cain's arm. And these kindred of Cain learned the ways of making progeny of their own, and they embraced more of Seth's kin, unthinking. And then wise Cain said, An end to this crime. There shall be no more. And as Cain's word was the law, his brood obeyed him. The city stood for many ages, and became the center of a mighty empire. Cain grew close to those not like him. The children of Seth knew him, and he in turn knew them. But the world grew dark with sin. Cain's children wandered here and there, indulging in their dark ways. Cain felt anger when his children fought. He discovered deceit when he saw them make word war. He knew sadness when he saw them abuse the children of Seth. Cain read the signs in the darkening sky, but said nothing. Then came the great deluge, a great flood that washed over the world. The city was destroyed, the children of Seth with it. Again, Cain fell into great sorrow and went into solitude, and he left us, his progeny, to our own ends. We found him after much searching, deep in the earth, and he bade us go, saying that the flood was a punishment for his having returned to the world of life and subverting the true law. He asked us to go so that he might sleep. So we returned alone to find the children of Noah and announced that we were the new rulers. Each created a brood in order to claim the glory of Cain. Yet we did not have his wisdom or restraint. A great war was raged, the elders against their children, just as Uriel had said, and the children slew their parents. They rose up, used fire and wood, swords and claws to destroy those who had created them. The rebels then built a new city. Out of the fallen empire they collected the 13 clans that had been scattered by the great war, and brought them all together. They brought in the kingship clan, the clan of the beast, the moon clan, the clan of the hidden, the wanderer clan, the clan of the rose, the night clan, the clan of shapers, the snake clan, the clan of death, the healer's clan, the clan of the hunt, and the learned clan. They made a beautiful city, and the people worshipped them as gods. They created new progeny of their own, the 4th generation of Cainites. But they feared the jihad, the prophecy of Uriel, and it was forbidden for those children to create others of their kind. This power their elders kept for themselves. When a child was created, it was hunted down and killed, and its sire with it. Although Cain was away from us, we did feel his careful eye watching us, and we knew that he marked our movements and our ways. He cursed Malkav when that one defamed his image, and doomed him to insanity forever. When Nosferatu was found indulging his tastes in foul ways with his own children, Cain laid his hands on Nosferatu and told him that he would forever wear his evil and twisted visage. He cursed us all for killing the first part of his children, the 2nd generation, as we had hunted them down one by one. Zillah the beautiful, Irad the strong, and Enoch first ruler. And we mourned them all, as we were all of a kind, and all of the families of Cain's childer. Though this city was as great as Cain's, eventually it grew old. As do all living things, it slowly began to die. The gods at first did not see the truth, and when they at last looked about them, it was too late. For as Uriel said, the seed of evil planted blossomed as a blood-red rose. And Troil, the child of his child's child, rose up and slew his father Bruja, and ate of his flesh. Then war racked the city, and nothing could ever be as it was. The 13 saw their city destroyed and their power extinguished, and they were forced to flee, their progeny along with them. But many were killed in the flight, for they had grown weak. With their authority gone, all were free to create their own broods. And soon there were many new kindred, who ruled across the face of the earth. But this could not last. Over time, there came to be too many of the kindred. And then there was war once again. The elders were already deep in hiding, for they had learned caution. But their children had founded their own cities and broods. And it is as they were killed in the great wave of war. There was war so total that there is none of that generation to speak of themselves any longer. Waves of mortal flesh went sent across continents. In order to crush and burn the cities of the kindred, mortals thought they were fighting their own wars. But it is for us that they spilt their blood. Once this war was over, all of the kindred hid from one another, and from the humans that surrounded them. In hiding we remain today, for the jihad continues still, and none will say when Cain will arise again from his sleep in the earth, and call for the city Gehenna, the last city, the city of judgment. The jihad continues still. Greetings, Cainites. I am Maquette, and welcome to another celebration of our Midnight Mass, this esbat, as we celebrate the dark moon and we celebrate our connections with each other up through the bloodlines into Cain. Tonight, our sermon, we learned about the first city and the wars and the climbing of the generations from one, which was Cain, to the standard 13, which everyone knows about. But did you know that we are on our 14th, our 15th, and our 16th generations? The Camarilla and even somewhat the Anarchs don't want to talk about that, but it's true. We have, in fact, daywalkers in our midst. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. That's actually why we gathered here, because not long ago we saw these harbingers of Gehenna as the end times, and we ourselves hated them. We ourselves hunted them down and used them as food. We used them as a way of upsetting the status quo within the ivory tower. But then we started to think. Once the Lasombra and the Tzimisce were gone, those blood traders were gone, those members of our sect that decided that they were going to hold on to their names while the rest of us had to fling them off. When we got rid of the Tzimisce, when we got rid of the Lasombra, it began to percolate. The idea that the Thin Bloods, the Duskborn, might not be the worst thing for us to latch onto. We could give them a home where the Camarilla refused, where the Anarchs just used them as an oddity and as pets. We would bring them in as brothers and sisters because they have no connection to the antediluvians. They are truly free. They are everything that we aspire to be. They are not bound into slavery. Speaking of binding into slavery, we have not seen each other in a month. And there's so many ways that we could have become bound in one fashion or another to the puppets of the antediluvians. So it's time that we unleash those bonds with another Vaulderie, as we do every month. We share our blood with each other. I bring us our Vaulderie goblet and my blade, which is made from the bone of my sire. I add my blood to this cup. Now, we pass this chalice around from Cainite to Cainite, each of you adding your own blood to the mixture. As the chalice makes its way around to each of you, and you add your blood to the ritual Vaulderie glass, I want us to think about how we have changed as a sect, where we don't just hunt down those we find as not worthy any longer. We found ways of handling those thoughts. Now that the leaders that we have abandoned us, we've realized that they themselves wanted nothing but power. And we will handle them soon enough. We will talk about them. But for now, let's talk about what they have made us miss out on all that time, and that is having the allies with the Duskborn. These children of Cain, who are not tainted by an antediluvian at all, could have been helping us for decades. Some say centuries that the 14th generation have existed. There was a time when the 13th generation were considered harbingers of Gehenna. But now we have these kindred who can't even manifest disciplines in a pure sense. They can't access powers directly. However, depending on what type of blood they drink, they can gain temporary power to the lower levels of any discipline simply by drinking the proper blood. Who would not wish for that? Who would not wish to be able to choose what discipline that they had simply by what they drank? It's amazing. Thank you. Each of you have added to this goblet, providing faith to our pack. In Cain's name we drink. May we never hunger, may we never thirst. Please pass this around as we continue to talk. We have, as of late, begun allowing the Duskborn to flood into the Sword of Cain. Because they are pure. Because they are not tainted by the blood of the antediluvian that even courses through my veins. We subvert that power. We do not allow them to take charge of us. But the Duskborn don't have any worry of that at all. And where we have practiced Paths of Enlightenment for centuries to bar ourselves from the need to be human, the Duskborns have come up with a new way. A way of living that is all their own. A new path that leads them into a light that we all have feared since our first night that we dug ourselves out of the ground after our grand shovel parties. The Duskborns have the path of the sun. All right, greetings kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and thank you for joining me in this midnight mass, where tonight we're going to be discussing the Path of the Sun. This is a whole new path of enlightenment created for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and primarily created for SPC use. These are storyteller antagonist characters, so we only get to see in the books that are actually set out as canon what these look like from the outside kindred of the Anarchs and the Camarilla looking in. This is it's very interesting. Followers of the Path of the Sun are called the Prometheans or kindling. This is a great joke straight out, because Prometheus was the Greek god who brought fire to the people. In reality, he was a titan who Zeus allowed to live with the great gods because he helped fight against the other titans. Considering the fact that the Duskborn don't have antediluvians, that kind of makes sense. The antediluvians would be considered pure vampires that don't have any bonding to a clan due to the fact that they are the start of that clan. The Duskborn would be on the same boat. They don't have an antediluvian, therefore they're not bound to a clan the same. They're also called kindling because the Duskborn are known for daywalking. They are known for going out in the sun and doing things that other vampires cannot do. And I think that the idea of bringing Duskborn into the Sabbat makes so much sense, especially with the Lasombra and the Tzimisce now gone and far out from the sect altogether, because I see them being the ones who really held them back. Whatever anti-tribute and pander that are left in the Sabbat would be more than willing to bring in Duskborn due to the fact that they don't have any connections. It's the exact same thing I keep saying. And the benefits of being a Duskborn arguably can way out measure the difficulties and the downsides. Being able to drink from any random resonance and produce the effects of although first level disciplines is very useful. Some of them can manifest a couple of levels of disciplines. Other ones have access to thin blood alchemy, and there's no telling what that can bring, because it's up to players and storytellers to work together to be able to bring out the effects of thin blood alchemy. In Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, we do not have access to playing the Sabbat, and unlike the other Paths of Enlightenment, Path of the Sun is not it's not brought up at all in the Playing the Sabbat book that we've been reading from also in these videos. So I will not be doing anything with that book, this book, when it comes to Path of the Sun. I do find that interesting because instead of Path of the Sun, it jumps into Path of Lilith, which has been removed from the Sabbat in V5 canon as far as what the outer clans see. So with that, let's go ahead and look at what the book has to say about Path of the Sun. Thin-blooded Cainites don't usually last long in the Sabbat. Either their vitae is too weak to see them through the creation rites, or the power differential they experience against more potent-blooded vampires puts them at a quickly fatal disadvantage, especially at the forefront of the Gehenna War. That hasn't stopped a certain growing subsect of thin-blooded Sabbat from testing the limits of the curse of Cain, however. In the evolving orthodoxy of the Path of the Sun, thin-blooded Cainites and caitiff are the only vampires truly free from the taint of the antediluvians. Nodist literature makes no small reference to the thin-blooded, plainly stating that when thin bloods are present in this time, Gehenna will soon be upon you. And with the Gehenna War raging nightly, few Sabbat would argue that event has yet to come. It is the time of thin blood. With no discernible clan lineage, thin bloods endure no overt influence of the damned hated progenitors. As fervent early adopters of this emerging path, they see themselves as the true heralds of the Sabbat, the new dawn of the race of Cainites, who have inherited no mark of the third generation's treachery. To that end, the traditional anathema of the undead, sunlight, has a diminished effect on thin-blooded Cainites. Followers of this path see it as part of their mandate to turn this to their advantage, and they are able to meet the Dark Father's threats, turning hours that normally see Cainites as having succumbed to the day sleep. Its followers have often easily recognized by burn scars and disfigurements they wear as badges of defiance and sufferance to Cain's name. The path of the sun is an imperfect path. It is very much unproven, more of an emergent outlook among those fighting at the forefront of the Gehenna War, and practiced almost exclusively among the very young Sabbat. Indeed, it has only very recently come into being with enough rigor for certain priests to consider it an actual path at all. Since the beast is less inchoate among thin-blooded Cainites, it likely won't serve well for more potent-blooded vampires in the long term, but that's not the point. The point is that thin-blooded followers of the path see themselves as potentially on the cusp of being demigods, and the path is as transformative as any of the more established paths of enlightenment. As yet, it has no codified tenets. The thin bloods of the Sabbat are still defining what it means to be a harbinger of the Sabbat's future, rather than etalons of the past. Some even forego the Sabbat's venerate practice of diablerie, unwilling to sully themselves with tainted blood of antediluvian lineages. A radical new perspective for the sword of Cain. While priests of the more established paths may deride the path of the sun as not a real path, they would very likely be shocked to see the rate at which the path has spread among those they considered lesser. The byblows and collateral shovelhead damage the Black Hand leaves in its wake. And not every adherent is a thin blood. Some would be considered caitiff in other sects, while yet others of more potent vitae who see the path of the sun as a way to violently atone for the foulness of their own sire's blood. That description of the path of the sun is amazing, and I really never even thought about the concept of non-thin bloods practicing. But I do like the idea. I really do. The idea that a lower generation vampire could very well be practicing this path of enlightenment because they see it as a way of burning out the taint of the antediluvians is kind of inspirational. And I'm really sad that the writers of the other book decided to not touch this one, even though the path of enlightenment symbol, the sun, the tribal sun that they use as their path logo, I guess, is found in it right next to the path of Lilith section for some strange reason. But let's go ahead and take a look at the ethics of this fledgling path. The ethics of the path of the sun are evolving, changing nightly. Unlike the other more established paths, the path of the sun strays closer to being a quasi-religion than a true frame of mind. As it stands, the path's ethics are inadequate to sustain a Cainite's relationship with the beast for an extended period of time, which is the second greatest threat to the path's long-term viability. The first threat, of course, is the fact that the final death rate for thin blood vampires in the Sabbat is critically high. So I like how it does point out that it's not a full-fledged path yet, which makes me think that we are going to see an update to the Sabbat book soon, hopefully in player guide format. That would be very, very nice to have access to that kind of thing. Although the game obviously is pinpointing towards the Camarilla and the Sabbat being complete opposites, and having the Camarilla and the Anarchs be more of the humane, where you're trying to keep your humanity as long as possible, rather than playing characters who are not following that. But Paths of Enlightenment, for the most part, a lot of Sabbat believe that they're the ones who came up with it, but they're very closely related to the Dark Age roads, where instead of like honorable accord, you had the road of chivalry, which very quickly evolved into having a darker path rather than trying to savor the roads. The Path of Night, which is very very related to the Path of Cathari in V5, was originally the La Sombra Path of Enlightenment, came from the Road of Heaven and the need to rise above as one of God's angels and not just its tormentors. The Path of Night, being a subset of the Road of Heaven, was more along the lines set so that you could take up a darker bent, so that even though you were an angel of God, you were there to tempt humans, to force them into difficult situations, to watch them blossom and overcome adversary. Where the Sabbat took that and bastardized it and made it into this horrible, twisted, make people suffer for the fact of suffering kind of thing. The ethics that are listed here say, let neither one's mortal nor Cainite heritage limit one's potential. So in other words, you can't give up specifically because you were this type of person before your embrace and because you were embraced by such and such clan. I can understand where that comes from when it comes to the clan thing, because even the Thin Bloods have a chance in their story of knowing what their sires were, and limiting yourself to going, oh, I'm just a Toreador, so I need to work on the artistic side of things and not be a warrior, can be limiting, to say the least. Destroy Cainites, but never consume them, leaving oneself untainted. I do like the fact that the ethic of this is do not diablerize. The idea that if you diablerize, you very well could raise your generation, making yourself have to assign yourself to the clan of the victim. In some cases, when it comes to Thin Bloods, you are at that point giving yourself new weaknesses. And the idea of Path of the Sun is being proud that you're a Thin Blood, or at least proud that you have separated yourself from your clan in that fashion, showing that even members of other clans, but primarily Catif, can also follow this path. And then there's also, do not allow the other would-be Prometheans to serve the polluted bloodlines of the Antediluvians. So in other words, you are hunting specifically for other Thin Bloods. You want to make sure that the Thin Bloods are not being used by other vampires in the Camarilla or the Anarchs, who are the puppets of the Antediluvians. If you see these other would-be Prometheans, you could try to recruit them, bring them into the Sabbat. But if they don't come, you're just going to have to kill them. That actually might be one of the few times that a kindling, that a practitioner of the Path of the Sun may diablerize, in my opinion. I think that if you know for a fact that you are diablerizing a Thin Blood, that you could probably get away with it, because you're not taking in any of the taint from the Antediluvians. In Chronicles, whether an infiltrator, a radicalizer, frontline fanatic, or daylight assassin, Path of the Sun Cainites are very much a sign of the times. Prometheans have a lot to prove and may be found at the forefront in many Gehenna War theaters, willingly throwing themselves at threats beyond their individual capacity to see how they fare as legion. They are eager to act against enemies during the forbidden hours of the day, bundled up in hoodies, face masks, and other protection. and have been known to lure humans into rival havens before night comes. Followers of this path are also likely to come into conflict with other Sabbat, who denigrate the path of the sun as mindless bravado and even hearsay. In response, they're relentless proselytizers and seek to convert their fellow Sabbat, as well as on the outs anarchs and disillusioned Camarilla fledglings, who find themselves pushed into the margins of their home domains. That's a really interesting way of looking at things. The idea that not only are they basically trying to defend themselves constantly from other Sabbat, because there's going to be a lot of them, despite my sermon tonight, there's going to be a lot of them out there who don't really think that they belong. There's still going to be that vampiric prejudice. I can see a good amount of the Sabbat supporting the path. I can see a good amount of the Sabbat supporting the Duskborn in the Sabbat, but following the path of the sun, it's going to be more rare, definitely. But the idea that they proselytize, that they go out and they try to find more recruits in anarchs who have had a falling out with their gang, or by Camarilla fledglings who just aren't handling the process that the Camarilla goes through very well. It's kind of interesting to think of that they go door to door and try to find more members of the Path of Sun. Now, disciplines. Most Paths of Enlightenment have a specific set of disciplines that they're known to follow. These are going to be things that make sense, such as like dominate and potence are going to work for like Path of Power and the Inner Voice. Path of Cathari is going to be really big into aspects and presence. They're going to be things that really fit with those paths. But it says here that the Path of the Sun finds especially frequent use of the alchemy, with which the Duskborn have an affinity. And there are some Sabbat Duskborn thin blood alchemy in this book, which we will be covering in level by level when we get to the thin blood alchemy higher ups in level by level. But that is it. That is all the information that we have on this fledgling Path of Enlightenment. And I think that it is well written and leaves so much to be desired. And that's not a bad thing, that the World of Darkness has yet again written something that has left me wanting more. That's what they're going to want to do. They're going to want to make it so that when maybe Path of Enlightenment books come out, we're going to be like, yes, we'll take that, or something like that. Or perhaps if a World of Darkness canon player's guide for the Sabbat comes out, maybe, please, we will have more to go on how to play. But for right now, the idea of not diablerizing, that kind of turns its back on the rest of the Sabbat. They're not outright saying that it's wrong, but it is definitely wrong for them because they are free of the Antediluvians' influence. And that's amazing. I think they did a really good job. And this actually reaches the end to the Paths of Enlightenment section in this book, and also marks the end of the Chronicles of Cain in the Book of Nod. So I will be putting out another video in Midnight Mass that just goes over the Forsaken Paths. But for right now, this is where we are going to leave off on this topic. I hope all of you have enjoyed this. I have tremendously loved doing Midnight Mass. Sabbat is a very passionate subject for me. I played it for a very long time as Tzimisce, and I'll completely admit my long-standing Tzimisce, Marcus, who I played for 5 years, it's half a decade. He eventually did turn his back on the Sabbat because he just didn't see it being able to keep up in the world. The Sabbat is definitely it's a sect that runs on despair, and it runs on peeling away forcefully your humanity. The Sabbat runs on faith, and I think now with the Lasombra and the Tzimisce, for the most part, obviously there are members of that blood still within the teeming masses, but with them gone, I think the Sabbat is more of a religious order than it is a political system as it was before. It was a violent, dictator-run political system. But now in V5, the Sabbat has a way of becoming a beautiful but zealotful organization that could rock the world of darkness to its foundations. I'm not really sure where the Sabbat would be going now, but it's something that I'm very interested in seeing, and I think everybody else out there is too. Whether you think that it should become player accessible or not, the idea of where the Sabbat is going definitely is intriguing, to say the least. I can't wait to see where it goes, whether it becomes accessible or not. Because I always found that it took a while to get onto a Path of Enlightenment. It's not like they hit you over the back of the head with a shovel, you wake up and you're on Path of Power and the Inner Voice. That takes coaching and brainwashing. And perhaps Sabbat does hold more of a concept of what humanity truly can be in the darker side. It does bring up thoughts of Jonestown and Waco, Texas, where we deal with the various cults that we've had to deal with over the decades, over the centuries in human life. If we want a drama where holding on to our humanity is the goal with all oppositions, then perhaps guiding us into playing Sabbat the right way, where the true victims of the Sabbat are its members, as their humanity slowly gets stripped away to the bare nerve, and we're exposed to hellish examples of what being a vampire truly can be in the world of darkness. That got a little deep. Anyway, I am Voivode Maketz, and this is our world of darkness, and thank you for joining me in this Midnight Mass, our monthly look into the Sabbat as player or as SPC fodder as it can be. I'd also like to point out that I put a Patreon together. For those of you who would like to help me make sure that I can up the quality of these and also the frequency of my videos, that I can put more out there, with it being something that I can actually grow with. It's there. It's there. I'll put a link in the description. But other than that, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time in Midnight Mass when the moon is dark. Happy hunting.